piece is actually super dear to my heart because of the struggle in making it and the representation that it had in my life at that moment. My name is Laura Buitrago, but my artist name is Lajubu, and the name came from the combined first, middle, and last name. So Laura Juliana Buitrago. I'm Colombian originally, and I came here when I was around 10 years old. And I'm an artist. I'm a full-time artist. Really grateful to be able to say that. I had a little diary, and I wrote in there that I had done a doll about what I wanted to be in for the future, because that was a project, and I put artists. So I made a little like easel and everything with my little doll because I really always wanted that. And when I finished my master's, I went to Colombia, and my friends were like, "What are you doing? You should be an artist. You need to be an artist." We were having a beer at my friend's house. I'll never forget. And they are like they're just creators too, like, and they were like, "Look, we could help you with like your social media." And my other friend's like this extroverted, like she dances and she does all these things, and she's like, "You need to be an artist. Like, what are you doing?" And it was the first time that I actually really considered it, and it was right before pandemic hit. Pandemic hit, and I just like we bought canvases, and I bought paint, and I started experimenting, and I was like losing my fear slowly. Come here, Artie. Little needy baby. So I was losing my fear slowly and having more confidence as the time went by, and I started sharing I had a little IG account called Lajubu Draws, like it was my drawings of my travels. And I started removing the draws, and I just changed my IG, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna paint and share it with people. And so, okay, my master's in Madrid, I have to go back to that because my master's in Madrid was in international development. And I did that master's after spending some time in Southeast Asia. I was in a school in Cambodia, and I fell in love with those kids, and I'm like, you know what, maybe I would like to be part of this more. I actually gave them art classes too. And when I did my master's, I realized that there's just too many politics and too many power games and money involved in something that I really thought it was meant to be very beautiful. Granted, I'm sure there are many organizations that do this in a very clean way that's not corrupt, and I know that. But I just saw a lot of gaps and things that didn't make sense in that world. So I did my thesis in the lack of lineage between the practice and theory of ethical standards. I had such a big dream to contribute to something, and it just broke my heart. Because there was no lineage. It's like, there's no way. There were so many players I interviewed that have been in the field, and they were like, there's no way we could follow those standards because there's no way we can follow them. Like, there's so many other players that are bigger than us that influence these decisions. And basically my thesis ended in the importance of the people in the communities to take leadership in them, and like they should be the ones guiding us, not us telling them what they need to be doing with their lives, right? And I really think that I had to go through all of that so I could get to where I'm at now. So I wanted my art to be also very healing. I didn't want to paint just for things for houses to look good. Like, I wasn't interested, which is fine. It's very valid if you want to create art for someone's home. I think it's something that adds to their home, and that's beautiful. But for me, I'm pretty intense, so it needed to be a bit deeper. So that's how I started painting, and I'm like, this is what I have to do. Like, it came to a point where I didn't have guilt walking away from working in that, in what I did my master's in, and I just started embracing, and that's when I started calling myself an artist, because I think that it is not because I am full of myself, because it's not that. I just think that I have always emphasized the importance of working on myself and this relationship with myself, that I value what I do so much, and I understand its worth, and I'm not scared of that. So I started embodying what it meant for me to be an artist. And that's when I started calling myself an artist. It was during pandemic when I was painting, and I'm like, this is what I've been meant to be doing my whole life. And everything that brought me to here had to happen. I had to start being an artist I was 29 by then. At 29, not before. I don't kick myself for being, I should have done that before. No. I had to do everything that I did to get to the point where I was ready to receive it. And that's where it started. Oh man, I think if I were to pinpoint what shapes me, what has shaped me has been my experiences, but also my approach to my experiences, and the importance and intention that I place in my relationship with those experiences and with those parts of me that I feel hold shame or that I've suppressed in the past. And I think that's what defines me. It's basically how I carry that relationship with myself. Depression, of course, like I'm not a doctor, so there's many reasons why depression happens, but I really believe that depression stems from us suppressing parts of ourselves. Like I really believe that, like the shame that we hold in so many things, the parts that we don't want to show, like suppressing parts that they don't need to be suppressed, they just need to be held. So in those sketches, I was just making just trying to see, okay, one of the first sketches was like this big black blob and then this white circle, and that's how I envisioned that thing that would follow me night to day. And then I started transforming it into like I did this painting that is actually not out here. I think I might bring it out to talk about it. I haven't even shown it to you. So during that period, that depression period that I was going through when I was doing the sketches for what I would want the relationship to be, I did this piece. It's not really part of my body of work. It's more of a process piece that I had to do alone in my house without thinking about what it would look like or the outcome. And I really felt like those parts that I suppressed and that were hurting, it was like my inner child in a way, and that's why it looks like a little fetus here. And I would literally ask questions. It says, it's in English and in Spanish, and I would write to it like, dime cómo puedo escucharte, like tell me how I can learn to listen to you, right? Or here it says, that's all I spoke, but who are you? How do I get close to you? Show me the way. Help me get to know you, like hold you, protect you. Okay, so the first piece is called an invitation, and it's meant to look like this, just like confusing thing outside of us, right? So sometimes depression we might connect it to like losing our jobs or a family situation or divorce and everything, but in reality, when we realize that it's inside of us, that's when the work begins. So in this collection, in the first few pieces, you see a huge difference in style, a huge evolution or change, and it's just, I feel like each piece of the collection represents also a human that's painting it, and we are multifaceted, and I want to embrace that so I could have a really colorful piece and I could have this piece, and that's okay. So that's the first piece. It's called an invitation. The second piece, this one is acknowledgement. And if you notice, so basically this piece is about when we first acknowledge that we are in charge of parenting those wounds and those parts of us. And if you notice, in the previous painting, it was like a big, confusing black shape. And here it starts mirroring the body. So it starts mirroring us. So it starts taking a human shape. This one, and it's titled No Such Thing as Demons. And as you can notice, the figure has more color because it's the first moment that the parenting really does begin. And it's like holding that it now looks like a full-on person, not just a shape. And she's holding them, but it's still, if you notice, the cord is like around her neck, and it looks like it could just at any moment just choke her. But she is trusting. That's why it's loose. She's trusting that this is going to be a really scary, scary journey, but I'm going to be okay because I need to trust this. And the hallway, it represents how I envision my emotional world. So I see it as a long hallway, but I don't see the end of it. And a bunch of doors that I don't see yet, right? But when I am able to sit outside of a door, it's when I discover a new part of me that I need to maybe transition from, or something that I need to heal. So it's still a work in progress. You can still see the grid from underneath in the underpainting. This was a red underpainting before, because I really like the colors I was going to use, and I wanted some of the red to peek through and contrast those warmer tones and the cooler tones. So this is a fourth painting, and I think I'm gonna call it The Room. And it's basically once you open that door, right? And this it's still unfinished, but it's the like this shape like leaving its womb, and it's starting to look more like us, more like a mirror. Hence the symmetry that you see there. This body is going to be realistic, as you see by the foot. I just started there, but this is going to be like a realistic figure, kind of like being more curious, not so scared, not feeling so threatened, but more curious and like letting it out of its container, I guess you could say that. I was hoping that I would learn to transform that relationship, to not be so scared of it, and to learn, hey, what are your ins and outs? Like, how can I get closer to you? How can I get to know you? And just like, I feel like whenever we face anything intimidating, the best thing to do is to just really connect and trust and connect from a space of love and groundness, and that's our guide. So this was actually my first attempt at oil. My first attempt at an oil painting. It was very stressful because at that point, this was before the collection, this was in 2020. And I remember that as I was painting, my knuckles, like my wrist, my stomach, I was so tense. My head was hurting. I was like super rigid because I was like, obviously when you're exploring something that you don't know, and you're kind of a perfectionist, because I was a lot more back then. I still am kind of, but I worked on that. It was very scary to trust the outcome because it goes by layers, so it looked really ugly at the beginning. Sometimes if I do ever get imposter syndrome, sometimes it's because I never actually went to art school. Yeah, I studied a bunch of different things. I have a master's in something else, but I've never really gone to art school. So I think a lot of if I were to have that imposter syndrome, it would come from like not knowing the right techniques or whatever, and wanting to have that and feel more, maybe like I would have more credit if that were the case, whatever. But back then it was a big point for me. And around this time, it was when I was seeing my therapist, and when I told her that I felt like I was in dark waters and I was not able to see what was happening, and it was an anxious and scary moment for me. And when she told me about turning the light on and everything, I made this piece, and it's basically about, I don't like to call it this stages, because I feel like I could be in this place in some part of me, and then in other spaces in me I can be here, and in others I can be here. Doesn't have to be linear. But it's called Uncharted Territory. I really believe in reincarnation, and I really believe that there's like a part of me that's bigger than me, that has existed, like my soul, for many years, and I really feel like that's my guide. And sometimes when I'm painting and when I'm going through this and I just let go and I trust, I feel like it's so present. So when I was doing this painting, actually, I started this painting in 2021. It looked totally different. It was so different. It had the similar concept, but it had different colors. It was like this green thing, and I hated it, and I couldn't look at it anymore. It was just like really stressing me out, and I'm like, no. And I put it away, and I turned it around, and I didn't see it for a whole year. And then something told me that it was time to take it back out, and I started working on it again, and it transformed completely, and I was in this flow that it was just as if, I don't know if you ever watched Soul, when they're in their blue little things and they're just playing the piano, the violin or whatever. That's what I felt like I was in. It was just like this other space, and then this painting came out, and I really remember choking up when I finished it and stepping back at the clouds and the infinite part of the sheet and how it came out, and I was just like overwhelmed with emotion. And the reason why it's called potential, it's because it kind of looks like an X-ray, but it's actually a glass that's pressed against the body. And with her face and expression, it's kind of like a discomfort, like comfort. It's like a comfort in the discomfort in a way. So she's like holding onto the glass and like kind of like not letting it go and finding comfort in it. Because sometimes we are so comfortable with our own limitations. Like it's safe to just stay there because it's scary to fail if we step outside of them. So this painting represents the potential outside of our own limitations and the potential outside of society's expectations of us. It could be as women, it could be as an immigrant, or because of our age or whatever. Another really special part about this piece is that I have finished it for a show, and it was drying, And I remember that I was showering and my partner like screamed like, "Oh my gosh!" And I came out and I'm like, "What happened?" And she's telling me that the painting fell and ripped. And you would think that after so many hours of work, it would be devastating. Like it's like, oh my gosh, this I have to turn this in like to the show in like a few days, and I just put in so much work and it's everything. But the craziest thing is that when that happened, I felt this like sheet of calm, like this like thing just took over me. I was super calm and I was like, I feel like I already got the biggest gift out of this piece. Like making this piece and like reaching that space was such a big gift already. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to approach this and mend this with the same love and grace that I would with myself and parts of me that I'm trying to heal, right? So I actually, there's a rip right here, and I did a line as if it was part of the window that was reflecting on the glass. And then behind it, I didn't want it to be inconspicuous. I didn't want to pretend that I was hiding it, because like how we are ashamed of like our imperfections and we try to hide them behind makeup or clothing or hair or whatever. Oh, that's my Alexa. So I didn't want it. I wanted to intentionally highlight the rip. I wanted to intentionally highlight the wound, I guess you could say. So I made like a little gold frame around it, and I wrote, "Healing and mending require love and patience." And that was very, very intentional, because I did it with as much love as I would like to have for myself in those moments. The biggest advice I could give to anyone wanting to pursue anything, I mean art, yes, but anything, is to get to know yourself. Because we spend so much time like trying to please people or trying to like have this external validation. And hey, sometimes I fall into that as well, but I worked so hard. I remember at one point in my life like begging life to like free me of the shackles that came with external validation. I was like, I would always, if I were to be so tied to that, I would just be painting to please. And that is never going to make you happy, and that's never going to liberate you, and you're never going to be successful. If you define success as only money, maybe, but as your quality of life and your joy, no. So I think that the most important thing is to do that work and really connect with yourself, so that you know what you want, you know who you are, and then you use that as an inspiration to create. Because when you're creating something that's so honest, someone is going to feel that. Like, people have to remember that there's a person behind each work, right? So there's a story behind each one. There was somebody sitting that thought about this composition, somebody sitting there that thought about the colors that they wanted to use, that's doing each brush stroke, and that inevitably touches someone even if they don't understand why. Like, if you stand in, I've had someone that stood in front of this painting and just like broke down in tears because they were so touched and they didn't understand why. They didn't know why, but they were just super impacted and they had no idea why. And I always tell people, before you ask me what the painting means, ask yourself what it means to you, because that's the message that it has for you, right? So I guess my biggest advice is to just trust yourself to create what you're meant to create. Connect with that energy, channel that, and create that way.